Welcome to the Gray Area Podcast. It is Friday, January 26, 2024. Appreciate you joining me here on Friends Friday on Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Gray Area Podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can also throw in a chat as well. Let us know what you're thinking about Conference Championship weekend, among other things, on a busy weekend. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. I am joined, as always, on Friends Friday by the host of the Get Right on 105.3 The Fan. You can find him on Twitter at Reggie Adetula. My friend, my brother, Reginald Adetula, joining me here on a Conference Championship weekend. Reg, what's going on?
Not much, my man. Good to be here with you. Shooting shoulders a little sore. Hadn't done a lot of basketball. Did too much basketball this weekend. But when the shot is going down, you just don't want to stop. And so the shoulder. Hey, it's the homie.
I know it's the homie Dalton Miller. What's up, man? I appreciate you hanging out with us. If you hear some of that, if you're listening to the podcast, don't mind us. We're just chatting with folks in the chat room as well. So if you hear that on the podcast, like, why are they talking to these people in the chat? Because we have an interactive show here on the Gray Area. So a lot to get to on this Friday, as I mentioned. AFC Championship game, NFC Championship game this weekend. You got the Chiefs and the Ravens. You got Lions, 49ers. The winners will be playing in the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. Shout out to Dallas. They won't be there. Yes, I did that to myself because,
you knew exactly
why
what
not?
I was going to say. All right.
Exactly.
Do I even have to be here? You can do my part of the show.
Oh, no. I had to take the time on Wednesday to bring John Machota on the show to help me get through some Cowboys therapy. And he was able to help me get through some of these things because I finally, Reg, decided after a week and a half that I was ready to talk about it because, me as someone who, lives this life as a Cowboys fan, besides covering them, it took me a while to digest what happened to the Cowboys last Sunday whenever it was. It doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah,
and now, what'd you say?
2 Sundays ago.
2 Sundays ago. This, again, that's how much, I don't even care at this point. So John had to help me out, and he did. So shout out to John Machota. You could check out that episode that we did together on Wednesday. If you missed that one, you can also watch it as well on my YouTube channel here at Kevin Gray Sports. But Reg, I'm so fascinated by this weekend's championship games because we have a chance. Let's go back down memory lane for a second. We have a chance to end the season the way that we started. Do you know how we started the 2023 NFL season?
I don't. My memory is pretty poor, not gonna lie. What do you mean?
We started with Chiefs and Lions on Thursday Night Football, the very first game of the season. And now we have a chance to have the regular season or the season end with those two teams in the final game of the season in the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. And
folks not hearing that. Like
no, they are not.
People have the conspiracy that the colors in the Super Bowl logo mean that it's going to be Ravens Niners. So folks not hearing
there's been plenty of people who have seen the quote unquote NFL script leaked, whether it be on local television broadcasts or whatever the case may be. They feel like it's the destiny of the 49ers and the Ravens to meet in the Super Bowl, which would be a fascinating Super Bowl rematch from what now 12 years ago already between the Ravens and the 49ers back in, 2012, when the Ravens with Joe Flacco, Colin Kaepernick of the San Francisco 49ers, and that one time Beyonce had a concert and blew out half the lights in the Superdome.
That's right.
In New Orleans.
The previous Har Bowl.
That's right.
We getting another one of those here soon.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that as well, as Jim Harbaugh is back in the NFL. He saw Pete Carroll leave. He was like, you know what? It's my time to shine again. Let me come on back here and get back to the National Football League.
Wait, hold on. You don't pretend like that was the John Harbaugh doing? John Harbaugh been doing the googly eyes with the NFL since he got that job.
John been there. Jim. Yeah.
I've been doing that's been a mistake that keeps happening for me, and I'll be calling Jim John.
Welcome back.
I appreciate you catching me, but yes, Jim Harbaugh been doing the googly eyes with the NFL. John Harbaugh's been in the NFL cooking consistently. But yeah, Jim Harbaugh's been doing to get googly eyes. So I don't think that was very much his decision. I feel like it was by the time that someone actually offered him, he was like, all right, let's go. It's time.
Or he looked at the NCAA with their investigation. He said, you know what? It might be high time for me to go ahead and roll on out of here with my national championship and head on back to the NFL where the Chargers are going to give me a bunch of money to go coach Justin Herbert and figure this thing out back in the NFL once again.
I mean, that's convenient, but he was jumping at the Vikings and whoever else was out there just like, hey, there's an opening.
Please,
like, hey,
somebody come get me. Just come get me, please.
I know that you guys are doing a coaching search. I just want to let you know I am a coach, Hey, just
I'm available. Just let you know, I'm available.
Just remember, I am a coach. And honestly, he returns to the league with the highest winning percentage in the league, right? Like,
yeah,
Jim Harbaugh's damn good at this. So it's not like he was begging for bread necessarily in that regard. But
because Michigan was ready to give it to him. Michigan was ready to give him all the money to stay there and continue to win national championships for them.
Dog, do you remember how bad they were?
Yes.
Do you remember? Like, do you legitimately remember? They were awful.
Getting beat down by Ohio State every year. Yeah, I remember.
And Michigan State too.
Yeah, for a while their little brother was giving them the business for a while there. Yeah, you're right.
And so he came in. They had him come in to win the big games. And for a while, I was on his neck about not winning those big games. Like, honestly, you can go like the first 6 years of his tenure there, where it's like, this actually isn't all that good. And then
shout out to Urban Meyer for that.
Right. and then you look up and boom, he done won their first outright title since 1948. So
how about that? And he leaves town immediately.
That's right. Immediately. Look, he did everything he could do for y'all. Everything.
He did kind of pull the LeBron James, did he? Said, look, I won y'all a title. Now it's time for me to go. It's time for me to go ahead and peace on out of here.
Ann Arbor, this is for you.
That's good. That's a good callback.
Thank you.
But his brother, John Harbaugh, is back in the AFC Championship game as they get ready to welcome in Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And Reg, my favorite part about this matchup, among many, is the fact that in a down year, Kansas City looked around and still remembered that they had the best player in the sport. It's like, you know what? We'll just ride that dude in a really good defense to beat Miami, and then we'll go give Buffalo some more heartbreak again, and then we'll go meet Lamar Jackson on the road in the AFC Championship game. I'm just fascinated that this group, especially how bad their receiver core has been all season long, in a quote-unquote down year, still find themselves with a chance to get back to the Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes is here yet again. His sixth straight AFC Championship game? It's just absurd that he's back here again.
Well, I mean, you remember, this is what we expected. Not necessarily all the winning, but the way that this team looks in some regard. This is what we expected when they got rid of Tyreek Hill or allowed him to go, right? Like, that was the gamble that they were making was, hey, we got this quarterback. As long as we give him some level of protection, it don't matter as much who he's throwing to. And last season, it was like, oh, wow, they found some gems, right? This season, it's like, oh, they got some busters out there. And still yet, right, this was the gamble. You gamble on the quarterback as opposed to the speedster who is getting older. And the speedster who's getting older is still incredible, don't get me wrong. But, like, this was the gamble. And the thing that's quiet about all of this is, like, we're always going to talk about this through the lens of quarterbacks, and I get it. And he is incredible, right? Like, he was out there trusting his guys, and they came up big for him in the right situations. Marquez Valdez-Scantling was like, hey, man, wind sprints. I'm going to keep doing those, but I'm going to actually catch the football this time. How's that? But outside of that, like, I think that we are kind of losing just how good this Kansas City Chiefs defense is. Like, yeah. They carried this team for a long period. Like, while Patrick Mahomes was out here lashing out at everybody else because his wide receivers couldn't catch, the defense was holding it down, and that's how they've gotten here, right? Like, that defense has been incredible, and so that's the part that's kind of fascinating to me. Just last week, we were doing the Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and I mean, to be fair, right, it ultimately did come out being those guys gave us good performances. I was looking at that game like this might be low scoring, but it's going to be a good one because those two defenses have been balling. And that's the reason why they're here. And it honestly is a lot of credit to Brett Veach in the way that he's continued to build the squad, that they've understood where to pinch and pull. And it's still gotten them to some good places. And of course, again, it makes it a lot easier when you're going, hey, the passing game going to be all right as long as we got Pat, right? It's going to be yes. Okay, right? Pat and Travis, right? Like, you do need that focal point. Even though it was a little bit of issues, ultimately they brought it all the way together, and here they are in the AFC Championship game. But no, that defense needs a lot of credit because, and you know what? put another one on Andy Reid, right? Put some more respect on Andy Reid, because this is another way that he's getting it done and getting to this place. Like, I think we've solidified his Hall of Fame status, and so we don't talk about him as much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we got to put another one on him. And Steve Spagnuolo, a fantastic defensive coordinator. Like, one of the things about Spagnuolo is that I look at him, I look at some other coordinators and point to just how important in the postseason, like having a play caller that gives you a tactical advantage matters.
Yeah.
In postseason football, because you can have a good defense, but when you get down to it, Steve Spagnuolo is out here disguising plays, and they have a lot of great talent, but that adds another advantage and it adds another layer that other teams are having to fight through in the postseason. And that's been a huge benefit to them as they've made this run.
And they've done it differently over the years as well. For a while, the Chiefs had a really good pass rush led by Chris Jones, who obviously is still there. But they had other guys like Frank Clark in years past who could really get after the passer. Now they got a really good secondary when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed, one of the best corners in the NFL. Nick Bolton, one of the best linebackers in the league as well. George Karlaftis, getting after the passer as well. They've got a lot of talent on that defense. Yeah, Trent McDuffie's been really good for them.
A lot of those draft picks, right? A lot of those guys that they drafted and had really good success with.
And all of them have played well. And as you mentioned, Steve Spagnuolo is a plus for them on the defensive side. I just look around and I'm thinking, Baltimore, who they got some good news. Mark Andrews has been activated. They're, tight end and one of their best players on the team. He's going to be good to go after coming back from an ankle injury that he suffered back in mid-November against Cincinnati. So Lamar Jackson is going to have yet another weapon to throw the football to. And it's funny because, and we talked about it a little bit, when Lamar Jackson was going through his whole free agency deal, whether or not he was going to get the long-term deal from Baltimore. And we were looking around at these other teams like, hey, Lamar's out here available. Are any of y'all going to call him or call his agent and be like, hey, what's up with you in Baltimore? Do you want to get out here and maybe see what we can do? And most of these teams who didn't need quarterbacks was like, you know what? Actually, no, we're good here. And now this man is about to be what will be a two-time league MVP.
Yes.
He's on the cusp of making his first Super Bowl.
Correct.
And really has been the driving force offensively, both passing and running the football, about why they are here, because Zay Flowers, has been really good as a rookie. Don't get me wrong. He's been fantastic for them.
Very good.
But at the same time, it's Lamar Jackson and the reason why they're here. But much like Kansas City, Baltimore's defense has been really good this year as well.
Yes. Yeah. I love this team. I'm not afraid to say it. I love it. Like all the way around.
Okay. I'm glad you said it. You know what's fun about Baltimore? They beat down everything in their path, and they beat everybody they're supposed to. They beat the bad teams. They've beat down San Francisco. They've beat down Miami. They've beaten down everything in their path. And you look at them and you think, you know what? They're legitimately a really good football team because they beat everybody they're supposed to beat, and they also beat the really good teams as well. And they do it convincingly every week, it feels like.
And even when they haven't beaten people, they've beaten them down, right?
Yes.
Like, they have been, I say this and I mean it quite literally. They have been dominant in literally every game that they've played this season. Now, have they let up off the accelerator and given games away at the end? Sure. But during the course of that game, they look dominant, right? And a lot of that, as you mentioned, credit to Lamar Jackson, right? That offense is incredible because he is at the hub of it, right? He be making these passes look easy. And then on top of that, like, the threat of run is crazy, considering that, this year, he hasn't even really been trying to run.
No, he hasn't.
Right?
He has not.
And even when he does run, he's not out here like trying to embarrass nobody. He's just being like almost utilitarian with it, right? Like, this is what I need. I'm gonna make sure I get down. Y'all not gonna hit me like that. We gonna keep it moving, right? And yet, like, this offense works really well. But this comes back to like what has been my big focus in this postseason. Again, you look at coordinators that allow and give advantages to what's happening. And the thing that's different about the Baltimore offense in particular the last couple of years is the offensive coordinator, the way that the offense is built, right? Previously coming in, Greg Roman does a great job building run offenses. But the problem is that you get to the postseason, and if you have a run-based offense and you don't have real good passing opportunities, and obviously they didn't have the talent to be able to stand that, handle that either, right? With the wide receiving core, then if you end up behind, you don't have an opportunity to get back into it, right? And then teams can kind of try and key in on stopping the run. Like, we can have a whole week dedicated to focusing on what you're doing. We have all this tape to go back to see how other teams played you. We can do things with it. Hey, man, they're wild multiple offensively now, right?
Yes.
Like, that we can hit you. We can throw to various different targets. And you talk about Mark Andrews coming back. That's another tool in their tool shed. And the reason why I say that, we can now go 12 personnel. We can go 13 personnel. Like we can put these tight ends out here and go big. We can spread this thing out.
Isaiah Likely can ball too. He's really good too.
we can do all sorts of different things. You don't know what to come in and key in on, and we can do all those things pretty well, right? So like there's the tactical advantage that you get with Todd Monken right there, in addition to utilizing the Lamar Jackson of it all and all these other pieces, right? Defensively, Mike McDonald, wild multiple, right? They've got great guys in the secondary. They might have the best linebacker duo in the league. Like you realize
Patrick Queen is a monster. Yeah.
Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, right? Like Chicago Bears fans are got to be shooting themselves in the foot. Like, come on, dog. Like, how you go over there and start balling? How did that happen? Right. And so, yeah, man, but like the thing about that defense, and yes, shout out to JEG 3682, right? That Baltimore defense.
Shout out to him. Shout
out to Unk, right? That defense is a monster, right? They don't even have like individual pass rushers that you go, there's that guy, right? I be watching the Baltimore Ravens and literally every week be like, oh yeah, Jadeveon Clowney do play there. That's crazy.
That's true. That's very true.
But they get there. The linebackers can cover. The linebackers can stop the run. The secondary is elite. You have Kyle Hamilton, who is a monster of a player that can play anywhere on the field if you need him to. Like, they're so multiple. And again, you get into the offseason and you have the talent that handles it, but then you also have the coordinators and the schematic advantages. I don't see anybody beating this team. I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. We've looked around at the head coaching cycle, and shout out to Antonio Pierce, Gerard Mayo, and now Raheem Morris getting the job in Atlanta. It doesn't look like Mike McDonald's going to get one of these jobs, and he's a defensive coordinator in Baltimore. And I'm sure John Harbaugh's looking around like, okay, cool. He's not going to get one of these jobs. He's going to stay here with me, and we're going to keep this defense cooking each and every year because he's done a great job with that defense. And what I love about Baltimore is that they've made the linebacker matter, much like how San Francisco does with Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen have been out here busting people in the mouth, and they have been wrecking people every single week. And the linebackers in these games have really been, some of the story for these teams, even with San Francisco, as I mentioned, Kansas City with Nick Bolton, and of course the Ravens. Linebackers have been, they said, remember us, we matter still in the NFL, and they have been really good for their team so far this year.
Yeah, man, the guys that are really good at playing that linebacker position absolutely matter a good amount. And so you're seeing that, right? We talk about the spine of the defense and how that's super important. Tackles, linebacker, safeties.
Yeah,
they got those, right? They have those in Baltimore.
Okay, so the fun stuff about this game is that Lamar Jackson is our only hope to not have Taylor Swift be talked about for the entirety of the 2 weeks between now and when the Super Bowl is, because if the Chiefs win this game, first of all, it'll be absolutely incredible because Patrick Mahomes will be back in the Super Bowl again. But then, Reg, we get 2 full weeks of how Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce came together, and we get to talk about it. Well, some of y'all will talk about it. I don't know if I will. Some of y'all will talk about it for a long time leading up into that game. And the only question I have is, will Usher invite Taylor Swift on stage during his halftime show? If that happens.
I have no idea. Like, I
got the answer for you. Hell no. It's not going to happen. Usher been waiting. Look, the whole moniker for his halftime show is like, this halftime show's been 30 years in the making. You think he gonna bring Taylor Swift onto the stage after what he done went through to get to this halftime show? I think not.
I guess maybe not, right? Like, I guess that's fair, but I have no idea how the Super Bowl halftime show gonna go. We've seen all sorts of things like pop off, especially with like people coming up, right? And one of the things, people being brought on stage. One of the things that I always joke about when it comes to the halftime show, they be trying to corner all the demographics, if you know what I mean.
Yes, all of them.
And so, look, Usher is like, as pop as it gets, right? Like, he's as popular when it comes to, you talk about holding down the aughts, right? He had the aughts on, and he all the way through, the tens as well, right? You get through there with a lot of different hits. And so I don't think you're going to get to a place where people don't know all the songs. But look, the NFL has been very happy about the romantic union of Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, right? Like, I can tell you, I have met personally a lot of young women who have found their interest in the NFL skyrocket in this way. So look, I imagine that could be another thing, right? Like that could be another thing if she just makes an appearance. Well, although to be fair, you get the effect with just seeing her in the box, as opposed to her getting out here and performing. So I guess you don't need her on the
or her shirtless brother-in-law out here, dropping beer, putting down beers, shouting at the top of his lungs and sub-zero weather in Buffalo, shouting out the press box.
You know what made me happy about that? He was acting wild, right? And I don't
wilding in Timberlands.
I do not kick it like that. But what makes me smile about that is that's clearly how he wants to kick it, though. That's clearly
yes. I feel like that's a regular day for him. Yes,
that felt like freedom. That's what that felt like. He was like, "Hey, dog, I don't have to worry about none of this. I am just here to have a good time." And buddy, he was having the goodest time that he could.
You see that he almost busted his tail jumping out that press box, and he almost slipped and hurt his ankle. Like he jumped out the window, and next he's like, first of all, he's wearing a pair of Timbs, and next he jumps out the window and nearly falls, busting his tail, trying to celebrate with the Buffalo Bills fan.
That's right. That's right. But you know why he didn't? That's an athlete, right? Like people see all them rolls and think, "Oh, look at this fact." Athlete. Did you see him jump back into the?
Thank you. You took the words right out of my mouth. He jumped back into that window like it was no problem for him.
And of course, he's wearing Tim's. Man, you want to traverse all that ice and snow without some like solid work boots, like solid. Yeah, of course.
Oh boy, I'm picking Baltimore. I think it's Lamar Jackson's time. As much as I love Patrick Mahomes and the fact that he's proven, okay, I can win at Arrowhead, I can win on the road, I can do this anywhere. It just feels like this is Baltimore's time to win this game. There's no level of deep analysis here, although we've kind of went through some of that. I feel like this is Baltimore's chance to win, and they should. I believe they're the best team in the AFC, and they'll win on Sunday against Kansas City.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with that so much, right? Like we talked about those linebackers. Isaiah Pacheco running the ball well is necessary for the Chiefs to do this, right? And Isaiah Pacheco I don't care
that
how
meme
hard,
of a running back.
Right? I don't care how hard them feet be hitting the ground, right? Roquan Smith gonna be hitting harder, right? There's those things, right? Again, we talked about how the wide receivers for Kansas City showed up right in the nick of time. You trust them to do it again?
Oh boy, that's a great question because they depend on a rookie and Rashee Rice. You mentioned Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Travis Kelce's the only one who I can, depend on most. But yeah,
and they got answers for that bubble, right? Like I know the cornerbacks for the Ravens are okay, but you talk about their safeties, like they can get 3 safeties out there, and all of them are like pretty scary, pretty tough to deal with. And again, I talk about Kyle Hamilton, like good luck to you and all your tight ends, right? And with those circumstances, like I don't like that matchup. And then, right, this offense, this Baltimore Ravens offense feels like they can do whatever they want whenever they need to.
Now Pacheco runs like they taking food off his table.
Did you see that they were talking to Pacheco about it in one of his media availabilities?
Yes, I did see that.
He said he's seen the people said he looks like he bites people. He runs like he bites people, or he runs like he bites the grass, which is a whole different level.
That is hilarious. Shout out to him.
He runs like he trains in Timberland boots. That's one of the things.
That's a great point. That's 100%. A great point because he's stomping the ground every time he takes a step running that football. He's a little powerful runner for a guy who's his size. He runs the football really hard for them. So
6th or 7th rounder again,
something like that. Yeah,
something like that.
One of them dudes that you think of where running backs don't matter. He kind of gives moniker to that.
They matter. Just you can get them. You can get them all the way.
You find them later,
places, right? Yeah, you get them everywhere.
Exactly. Speaking of running backs, Detroit looked around at this past April's NFL draft and was like, hey, let's take a running back in the first round, see how that works out for us.
Which, by the way, can I pause you there? There's some people on the show like, hey, you and KG need to apologize because y'all laughed at the Lions on that draft night. And I sure as hell did. And I feel like you did too when they took Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, something like that early.
Yeah.
And then they took Jack Campbell. They took an off-ball linebacker. Like they took a running back.
A very football named person at linebacker later on in that first round. Yes, they did. Yes.
And like you could extend that into the second round where they get Laporta and they get Brian Branch, and literally 3 of the 4 of those have been incredible for them.
They had a hell of a draft. Like looking back on it, like you mentioned, the contributors that they've had for them this year, they had a great draft. But look, other than Bijan Robinson, who was a generational, player, regardless if he was a running back or not, I felt like he was the only one worth taking in the first round. Jahmyr Gibbs was a really talented player at Alabama. And for some people, they felt Jahmyr Gibbs might be a little better than Bijan, which I was like, you could pass that over here because I want to know what you had to be able to make that call. But at the same time, he's been really good for them as their pass catching back. But what I love is that Jared Goff, for someone who was discarded by the Rams because they looked around and said, you know what, we feel like we can get to a better place with Matthew Stafford and win a Super Bowl. And to credit to the Rams, they did do that. But he is now back in the NFC Championship game, taking Stafford out along the way. And Dan Campbell and this team are back in the NFC title game for the first time since 1991. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was one of the dudes who got on there when Dan Campbell was hired. And I said, look, this cat going to be fired within a year and a half of this job. And for some reason, this team looked around and was like, you know what? We'll bite kneecaps off every week and we'll find our way to the NFC title game. And here they are.
Well, the Dan Campbell of this is funny for me because I remember when he was the interim in Miami, and like he had the same get down, right? And we used to call him Man Campbell, right? Like it was all this like testosterone and energy. And
it gave real meathead vibe,
right? Exactly.
Real meathead vibe.
That's the word, right? Meathead, right?
Yes.
But that's the energy that he had in that first, that initial press conference. But the thing about it is that is the first layer. When you start seeing the way that he kicks it, it's like, oh, no, this all makes sense, right?
Yes.
Like there's a lot of intelligence behind what is just like the meathead rapping of this all, right? So there is that culture of, and it's inherently football, really, the ways that we've seen it, right? The ways which we're going to be tough, we're going to be gritty, all those types of things. Behind that, look at all the folks that he hired. Like there's a lot of smart folks on that staff that know football, right? But then also are like schematic advantages, right? We talk about Ben Johnson, right? This dude is up for all these damn jobs because he's doing a great job offensively, right? There's that, and Andre Glenn has done a fantastic job getting a lot out of defensive players that have not really been built right? You went around, you named 3 of the 4 teams, talk about how all their linebackers are good, and you stopped right before you got to Detroit, right? Like, who's that? Anzalone or whatever? Oh boy over there, like they ain't really got the names when it comes to this linebacking thing, but they're getting it done, right? Andre Glenn absolutely deserves a lot of credit. So there's that. But then also, you look at the way that like the decision making, the game management of Dan Campbell, right? Those are actually significantly like very progressive in the ways that we view football and the ways that he goes about it, right? He's really aggressive,
extremely aggressive.
And so like you look at him as a meathead, but you can't. This is why like generalizations end up being a problem, because if you just go, he's a meathead, you go, all right, he's probably uber conservative, too traditional in the way that he goes, the way that he hires, like all those things you would be dead wrong on. And so like you have to look at it as a full product, and then you have to add Brad Holmes and give him a lot of credit because they've went. And here's the tough thing about what we've talked about, right? I still defend the fact that I laughed on draft day because like I think you could have gotten Jahmyr Gibbs significantly later, right? I think you could have gotten well, maybe not significantly, but you could have gotten him later, right? I thought you could have gotten Jack Campbell later, right? I don't think that you had to get those guys high. But here's the thing that they did. They went and they got guys that they knew were going to work in their system, and they worked in their system. And ultimately, people are not going to care where you drafted them if you work, right? And if it works and if it wins. So that's where they were. And so like when it comes to positional or draft value, yeah, they said screw draft value because we're getting guys that we believe strongly in. And ultimately that's worked out for them. So shout out to them in that regard.
Yeah. And Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, has done a terrific job. You talk about putting them in positions to succeed. Ben Johnson has done that perfectly for Jared Goff in this offense. But my favorite part about Detroit is
Brad Holmes has too, because this is you mentioned the idea of like that swap that the Rams and Lions made, and like here stands Jared Goff in the NFC Championship game, which I know like I don't think you were intending this, but I think there's other people that have been like, I bet the Rams want him back. No, they do not.
No, they don't.
Right? Like,
no, they don't.
He is a very particular quarterback with a very glaring hole, which is him under pressure is a problem. Like, obviously, I say that, and there's a lot of people who go, all right, well, any quarterback under pressure is worse. No, you don't get it. He turns into an abysmal quarterback under pressure.
Yes, very much so.
He is a solid, pretty damn good quarterback when he's protected. But when he's not, he turns into a gremlin, right? And that is tough. But what do they have? One of the best offensive lines in the league and a lot of play action for you, right?
Yes.
They were like, we know exactly what this is, so we're going to operate with it in such a way that he'll be good, like he'll be fine.
They got it. Yeah, they got a nasty offensive line. Penei Sewell is one of the best in the NFL, and that's what they've done. They've built a solid running game around Goff, a dominant offensive line, and you are going to get dissected in play action with them. And you talked about it defensively with Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator. Here's the problem that they're going to run into on Sunday against San Francisco, and this is in the context of Deebo Samuel, playing for them on Sunday. They can't defend the pass at all. Baker Mayfield looked up and said, you know what? Mike Evans is really good. Let me start throwing the ball to that cat all the time. And they had no answer for Mike Evans throughout the course of that game. Now, granted, Detroit was obviously able to win the game, but at the same time, you look at the elite, point guard that is Brock Purdy. He gets to throw the ball to George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Jawan Jennings is a decent receiver as well. And that's right. You could also throw the ball to Christian McCaffrey if you want to as well. They got a lot of dudes that put a lot of pressure on you to where if San Francisco doesn't win this game on Sunday, I got to look around at Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch like, hey, man, all this talent, all these wins, all this stuff you've been doing these last couple of years, and you still can't find yourself in a Super Bowl again. I got a lot of questions for that, but I think San Francisco on both sides of the ball is just better than Detroit. Really nice, cute story for Detroit. San Francisco on their best day should beat down the Lions in the NFC Championship game. I think it'll be close, for a couple of quarters, but I think San Francisco ultimately pulls away and wins this game, in convincing fashion.
Well, the problem is I don't know if it'll be their best day, right? We're trying to see if Deebo Samuel goes and if Deebo Samuel's effective, right? With that shoulder injury, I know he practiced yesterday, so I'll have to see what the practice report is.
I think he'll play on Sunday. I would be hard pressed to not see him out there on Sunday
because that's a chunk of your playbook that you basically can't run.
Yeah,
right. Ain't nobody else doing Deebo Samuel stuff. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey. Have you noticed he has been kind of less effective in the postseason as well? Like maybe he is carrying something in a way. That's made.
He turned it up a little bit against Green Bay. Like when they needed a play from Christian McCaffrey, they were able to get some plays from him. I'm not necessarily concerned about him going into Sunday.
And then you mentioned Kyle Shanahan. Like he gets in his head sometimes, right? You remember that one time? Remember that one time in Atlanta when they had a really big lead?
Or that one time when they had a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl against Kansas City? You remember that one time?
Yeah. So I think those things, like if you have that kind of come together and then maybe Kyle does the Kyle stuff, right? Because every head coach has their issues. It's one of the things that's a little tough when we start talking about this. We can always nitpick, and I do it with everybody else. Every coach has their issues, their blind spots. They're human, right? The thing about the Lions in this game, and I haven't fully thought enough about it, which I probably should. It's Friday, but is like the Niners with they play better from ahead, and they have a little bit of issue if they're playing from behind because now you put you're not able to do as much of the disguising, you're not able to throw a little bit as comfortable, and now you have Brock Purdy back here playing like a full-fledged I'm gonna carry my team quarterback. And I think that's where he can get into some issues. But as you mentioned, the Lions aren't really well suited for playing the pass. Yeah. So I'm like, does that work for them? Does the idea of you can get it to get out early, get to a good game script for you, a bad game script for San Francisco, and then make Brock Purdy get in these circumstances where he'll have to throw the ball and maybe throw it away. And of course, they're not playing in the rain necessarily, right? Which really hampered Brock Purdy. But I'm like, if you have him throwing the ball up, are you going to have more opportunities to take away and change the way this game goes? I don't know. That's my thought. And that was how I thought the Packers would win this. I thought you go out, get the ball first, score, get a stop, score again. They kind of almost did that, right? Got the ball first. Yeah. When they kicked the field goal, and I was like, oh, that's tough. They got to stop. They got the ball again, and they were driving, and ultimately they didn't end up scoring there. But I was like, oh, okay. They're going to get out early and then do this thing. And even then, they still applied a lot of pressure to what the San Francisco 49ers did. I'm interested in seeing if the Lions could do something similar.
Yeah, I don't think the 49ers will be bothered a lot in this game. I think what woke them up was the fact that a Packers team who was really competitive really tested them in that divisional round, and I don't think they'll come out against Detroit playing around with them. Detroit's a good football team.
And they can run the ball really well.
And they run the ball well.
That's something the Niners actually don't defend very well. Is the run.
Yeah. But I think based off of what we've seen from San Francisco when they have been at their absolute best, the two best teams in the NFL this season have been the Ravens and the 49ers. And I expect the 49ers to win this game on Sunday as well. Again, I think it'll be competitive for probably the first half, but I think by the time we get to the end of the game, we'll look at what was a double-digit, win for San Francisco, which, would set up an incredible Super Bowl between the Ravens and the 49ers in my mind. But yeah, defensively, San Francisco's good. We mentioned their linebackers were Greenlaw and Warner. Defensive line with Bosa, obviously with, Armstead there as well. Secondary is decent, but I think they just have too much on both sides of the ball. Now, what's interesting is they do have a rookie kicker who, that may come into play a little bit for them, but I don't think it will necessarily for San Francisco. So I'm picking the Ravens and the 49ers to win the AFC and the NFC championship games to set up a nice little rematch from a little over a decade ago in the Super Bowl in Vegas.
Yeah, that feels like the pick for me. I mean, I like what the Lions have done, and I wonder if that like aggression that Dan Quinn has, the ways in which they're willing to throw a little trick play out here, will maybe give them.
He won't be scared. That is one thing that Lions team will not be on Sunday. They will not be scared, and they will be extremely aggressive because they're probably looking around like, man, we're playing with house money, so we're gonna go out here, balls to the wall, and just go out here and just play. Right. And we'll see what happens. All the pressure is on San Francisco. Of the four teams in the championship games this weekend, San Francisco has the most pressure because they are the team that's supposed to be here and get ready to get to the Super Bowl. To me, if they don't win on Sunday, that will be an extreme letdown for them. But I think San Francisco will show up with their best game to win that game on Sunday. So it should be a hell of a championship weekend with the Chiefs and the Ravens, Lions and 49ers. Winners will go to Vegas to go see Usher perform at halftime.
And maybe play a game.
Yeah, maybe play a game. My wife, she doesn't give a damn. Here's what's funny about this, too, before we transition. We were watching the Bills and the Chiefs divisional round playoff game. Mm-hmm. And when the Chiefs won, I looked around and I said, hey, babe, we're just now one win away from, Taylor Swift and, her Legion or whatever, descending upon the Super Bowl in Vegas. Yeah, or whatever. And she looked at me and she said, turn that shit off. Now, mind you, my wife is a massive Beyonce fan and she loves Beyonce. She's like, I don't listen to none of that going on. So the last thing that she wants is her Usher Vegas Super Bowl halftime interrupted by all the talk of Taylor Swift for 2 weeks going into the Super Bowl because she's here for Usher.
Sure. Look, there's going to be plenty of Usher. I don't know. I have not found myself being too upset.
Are you not too excited? Oh, no, really?
Not the Usher thing. I'm talking about the Taylor Swift thing. I have not been too upset about like the Taylor Swift. It is kind of wild that they feel the need that every time, get a shot of her. But I also I kind of get it, right? Like it's one of the things. It's how they've kicked it, right? It's just like when there's a quarterback controversy, and every time they look over to that sideline, they make sure they have
look at the back of the quarterback. Hey, look at him.
Look at him right there. You see him?
You see him?
He got his helmet on too. You see it?
He's up and throwing.
That's how they kick it, right? Like that's how we kick it. And I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like upset with it. And she seems like she's just in there having a good time. Like she's not out here. Like she's just like, I'm here watching a football game. And she seems to really be getting in on it. Like I saw one of those instances, Pacheco had a big run. They turned to her. She's like, go 10. I'm like, yeah, she's just having fun. It's cool. I'm with it.
Oh boy. Speaking of kicking, is it time for Jason Kidd to kick rocks in Dallas? Because
look at the transition.
How about that? Professional at work here. The Mavericks, okay, they've lost 3 straight. They're on the road in Atlanta on Friday, and then they welcome in Sacramento on Saturday before they play Orlando on Monday. And this team, it feels like they're in trouble. Now, let me paint the picture for you.
Okay.
So on Wednesday, having lost to the Lakers and the Celtics, they come out hot against the Suns, right?
Rain Williams knocking threes, baby. Let's go.
Right. Hitting the barrage of 3-pointers. Okay. Then we get to about the second quarter. Things still going pretty well. And then all of a sudden, Grant Williams, technical foul, Nurkic technical foul, Durant technical foul, just some unnecessary, stuff, all the stuff going on. Right. And then we look up And we see that the Suns, they've cut this lead to 1. And by the way, your man Luka Doncic, after he scored 24 points in the first half, gets a technical walking off at the end of the first half. Devin Booker proceeds to hit a free throw at the beginning of the third quarter. He would go on to score 21 more points in that third quarter, literally outscoring the Mavericks by himself, 22-20. And by the time that we ended the third quarter, what was a 16-point lead from the Mavericks turned into what was a 22-point deficit at the end of 3. And we looked around like, man, what the hell just happened here? Oh, that's right. Devin Booker just happened. And now the Mavericks, who lost by 23, are now on a 3-game losing streak. And we're looking around at Jason Kidd like, hey, man, your team out here losing composure. Cats going into business for themselves, Grant Williams. And your team can't keep it together to the point where y'all got y'all tail whooped by a Suns team that really didn't have it in the first quarter and then turn it around and beat you down for 3 more quarters. And now here we are. Like, is Jason Kidd in trouble here in Dallas?
No.
Oh,
no, he's
not at all.
No, he's not. One of the things to remember when it comes down to this is you have a team you got a couple superstars on this team. And one of the things about being a head coach is obviously there's some guys who are X's and O's guys. Jason Kidd does not appear to be that. There's some guys who are like kind of culture guys. I don't know. But one of your jobs as a coach is managing personalities. That he has, right? Kyrie Irving being here and that having worked swimmingly. I understand that there haven't been very many things that have popped up that would have been like catalysts for the shenanigans. And you know what I mean when I say the shenanigans. Don't make me say it, right? There have not been any of those circumstances. But like Kyrie Irving not only likes being here, he respects that guy. Luka Doncic,
yes,
for all intents and purposes, as of right now, seems to respect that guy. That is a lot, right? Like that's not something that we should gloss over, right? That matters, right? We just saw a coach get fired for losing that with the quickness in Milwaukee, right? Like managing those personalities matters. On top of that, I think the expectations matter.
By the way, real quick,
yes,
shout out to Giannis for playing it off like he had nothing to do with that.
I mean, technically, he didn't fire him.
I invited Adrian Griffin to my wedding. I love playing for Adrian Griffin. Hey, Giannis, shut the hell up, man. We know what time it was.
I love him. Yeah, I mean, he might not be great at his job, but I love him. And
he come to my wedding, though. He come to my wedding.
That's right. A lot of people come to his wedding that are not going to coach his basketball team. But yeah, like when it comes down to it, you also have to look at the expectations. And I know, like, hey, this is you've got Luka Doncic. The expectations are always in a certain place. Jason Kidd said this on the podium after that game, and I actually agree with them. It's like, hey, man, they're running a lot of guys who are like minimum contracts out here, whatever, running them kind of high, running them hot, expecting them to do a lot of things. Like you realize you're getting out here like Derrick Jones Jr. We need you to play great defense and knock down a whole bunch of shots as a starter. Where they do that at, right? Like Dante Exum, you're expecting to come in and do big things, and some of it's because they've shown you, and then you have a lot of other dudes like. Josh Green, Jaden Hardy, like that were question marks coming in. The expectations on the season were you're going to figure some things out. And so like this is part of the figuring. And it's very evident, partially because we've heard him say these things for a very long time now, that the message has been there that, hey, man, y'all need effort. They're just not doing it, right? And even though he says it in some of the absolute worst ways, for like the public,
I'm just watching just like y'all are.
Right. I think there is something to be said for like, some of this has to be internal. Some of this has to come from on the court or some of these players. And the this that I'm speaking of is accountability, right? And the tough part about it is like, especially in the ways that the NBA has gone, where everybody's trying to maximize. We've spreadsheeted this thing out. Everybody's trying to maximize the efficiency, and then also it's like the salary cap of this all because we have so much money in big players. You're trying to save money elsewhere, get young guys with upside and all these things. We're kind of like losing the value of the mid-tier player and the veteran and the scrap and like all the charisma part of this, the people portions of this, because what they need is somebody that's going to put their finger right in your chest. they need this guy, right? Because this guy goes, damn well you're not playing defense well enough. Right? Yeah. You can say you playing defense. You're not. We both know you're not, right? They need that level of accountability on the defensive side of this, right? Obviously, it would be nice if they had some people that consistently knock down threes. Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be nice if they had somebody that was a consistent, defensive player where it's like No matter what, we know what we're getting from that player, right? And everybody
It
else
doesn't have to rely on a 19-year-old to get out here and do it every night for him.
It would be nice, right? Those are things. And maybe sometimes those happen to be guys that correspond. But ain't nobody on this team going to go to Luka Doncic and be like, hey, Luka, you're doing great on offense. You could give me more on defense. You know damn well you could give me more on defense. Or, hey, Luka, cut it out.
Yeah, and that's the part.
And it's not just about Luka, to be fair. But I'm like, I don't think you have anybody with the clout and the cachet. And I'm thinking someone like a Mike Conley, someone like a CP3, someone like a Draymond Green, someone like a PJ Tucker. Guys that hold the rest of the team to account and set a status quo, a baseline for this is the effort, this is how we are, this is the culture. And this team hasn't had that for a while.
Yeah, and I think what bothered me about the game on Wednesday, Luka getting into it with a fan. Now the fan, removed themselves after apparently security walked up to him, because the initial report was security had him thrown out at the request of Luka Doncic. Now it was later clarified that the fan just got up and walked out because they realized that the Suns was whooping the ass of the Mavericks so much. He was like, I don't have to worry about it. Don't even worry. I'll just leave. I'll leave. By the way, which I think is an underrated part of this story, the fan looked up and said, you know what? Suns out here whooping them. I'll remove myself from the situation.
I've seen the important parts of this game.
I've seen enough. I'll just go ahead and remove myself.
And when he left, did he lie when he left? Was that game?
Oh, no. Game's over with. Game's done.
Yeah.
But Luka that gets into it with Tim McMahon at the end of the game, going back and forth about, him reporting on it, to which the funniest part of that was watching the rest of them come to the defense of Tim McMahon. Like, hey, Luka. Now, we heard it too, okay? We were sitting here, we heard it too. So before you get out here trying to jump down Tim's throat, don't you try it, because we outnumber you right now, okay? There's a bunch of us and only one of you sitting up there. We don't care how good you are. You're not going to come to the doorstep with Tim on that one, which I thought was hilarious. That was funny. But the most important part is, look, man, it felt like this team unraveled in a lot of different ways, composure-wise. They went into business for themselves. And I have to bring that to the doorstep of Jason Kidd, because there have been too many times I've looked around at this team and, number one, thought, how come you as the head coach didn't look at your players and say, you know what, the referees are out here screwing us tonight. You guys go play. I'll take the brunt on this tonight as your head coach, and I'll deal with the referees. And so he just looked around and was like, you know what? They go have to figure it out for themselves. That's the part where you're supposed to step in, at least in my mind, as a leader, and say, you know what? I'll take it. You guys go play. I'll deal with the refs, and then we'll see wherever happens. Because I wouldn't have mind Jason Kidd getting a technical foul or even getting tossed in that game if it had come down to it, because I felt like he didn't protect his guys in that way, the way that a coach that you see when those situations happen tends to do at times for his basketball team.
Yeah, the tough part is, like, I'm right there with you, right? I don't want to make it seem like I think anything different. Like, I actually am right there with you. It feels like a lot of good coaches in that circumstance make it clear, hey, you guys need to stop focusing on the refs. That's my job. I'll handle that. You guys go play, because they absolutely let go of the rope because they were paying attention to the refs. The problem is, it seems very clear that that's not in Jason Kidd's demeanor.
Yes.
And so I'm stuck, because I wonder, is it unfair to be like, well, put it in your demeanor, right? Is it unfair to be like, yo, add that tool to your bag? Or does it then have to be, okay, it's unfair to ask that of him. Now you need to find a different way and have another person, because he is right. They need to internally be able to tell themselves, we're not going to do anything if we do not give this effort. And the clear thing about that is, when they're not making shots, the effort drops, right? When they're not doing,
which is something we've talked about too much for this team. We talked about that way too much for this team in the Jason Kidd era. We talked about it way too much. And
people can't put a battery in your back all the time behind that.
Yes.
So, like, you have to be able to find that from within. But at the same time, I'm with you. Like, it feels like, well, then if you're just sitting there and not you can't really add in that way, what is it? Like, where are you adding an advantage to this team? And I know Tim Cato says this, and I like giving him credit. He might have said it on here with you. The idea that there's a few guys at the top of the league that are like clear game changers as coaches. There may be some guys at the bottom of the league that are clearly not that good at this. And then there's a lot of coaches in the middle that, varying here or there, just kind of coaches in the league. And Jason Kidd is aggressively one of those coaches, it feels like.
Yes.
And so there's something to be said for that. Like, all right, if you do move on from him, who do you find, right? That's ultimately always a question that we ask. But It really does. Like, it feels like this season more than ever. You're looking around and you're like, hey man, where are the advantages that you're adding to this team? But again, I come back to my ultimate answer. I don't think he's in trouble. Like, again, I think that this was a particular season where you're trying to figure some things out about the way that your roster is building. Your roster is not built in a way to sustain continuous success. And then two, you want to see what it looks like once you fire Jason Kidd and see what happens with Kyrie with the next guy. You want to see what it looks like with Luka with the next person.
And that's the trap they kind of find themselves in, because you talked about it earlier, the ultimate respect that Kyrie Irving has for Nico Harrison, and more so obviously for Jason Kidd, with him being his quote unquote idol, growing up as a kid, watching him play for the New Jersey, Nets at the time. You fire Jason Kidd, you open up a whole different issue with your superstar and Luka, and also Kyrie, when it comes to deciding how things go down for them moving forward, because I don't know how that ultimately works out for them based off of what those two need and how they are managed, as you talked about, with Jason Kidd being that guy who does a lot of that for them.
Yeah. And the tough part about it is when they're good, they're really good. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're great. They're the best backcourt in the NBA. Luka and Kyrie are the best backcourt in the NBA when the two of them are on the floor together. The problem for this team is we hadn't hardly seen that this year, because they've had more starting lineups than any team in the league.
And
they
a lot
can't
of
get the continuity.
Related, to be fair.
Yeah, injury related. They can't get the continuity, can't get any chemistry. And when they do get out there together, they're great.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times we haven't been able to see it. So
And in Jason Kidd's defense, again, like, this has been the second time, and obviously not to the same extent as that year that they go to the Western Conference Finals, but I've seen them defend in ways that I did not think capable with this bunch of guys. Or, like, I've seen it for short stretches. Now, of course, is that enough? I don't know. But, like, I've seen it for short stretches where I'm like, oh, these guys are actually, like, defending. That's something. So there is some credit to be given there, as we also, like, we always want to bring a lot of blame. I want to be careful to make sure to give the credit where I can. But yeah, like, I don't know that you had the roster that was that. I mean, we all looked around and were like, you don't have the guys. And that's one of the reasons why you had a lot of hope in Grant Williams to be something like that guy that we were talking about. The guy that's like, hey, individually, he's going to defend every night. He's going to have, he wanted to be leader guy so bad anyways. It was very evident, right? He has that kind of like talking personality in the locker room. You were like, all right, well, maybe he will be the guy that could be accountability guy. I know that he said something as much early in like the, media day and like those types of things. And it just has not come together. And the worst part about it for me is I think he could still be better defensively. I think he could still knock down shots a little bit more consistently. I think that the ship has sailed on him being the guy that is accountability guy. I think the ship has sailed on him being a guy defensively that any night you depend on him to give you his individual defense no matter what is happening. I think those two things are out the door. And that's really tough because I was really hoping that would be the upside for you. On a relatively reasonable contract, you would get a guy who is capable of doing those things, giving you that baseline in the culture aspect of it, and then giving you that foundational defensive player. And I think you did not have those two things.
There's too many guys at the same age trying to be that guy. Like Luka's 24. Grant Williams is 24, 25 years old. You talked about it earlier. There's not veteran leader guy. And you want Kyrie to be that guy? Not necessarily. And you look around and you're like, well, I guess we're going to just all figure it out for ourselves based off of what's here in the room right now.
Defend if you feel like it, guys.
Yep. If y'all feel like it tonight, go ahead and do it. Because Jason Kidd not going to necessarily, they talk about how they, measure accountability and being able to, collaborate and all these other things. It just has not worked out, at least right now, during this 3-game losing streak. And again, it's a long NBA season. There's 82 of these games, but at the same time, I don't like to assign must-win games to, game 45 of the regular season or whatever it is. But they need a win against Atlanta, because if they don't beat Atlanta on Friday, they take on Sacramento on Saturday, and then they welcome in Orlando on Monday. And they still got games against the Sixers, the Timberwolves. They've got a stretch here that's really, really difficult for them, that they got to find a way to win a game, because if they don't, this thing can unravel. And you've seen the West. It's tough as hell in the Western Conference right now. Suns out here to won 7 straight. Clippers have been arguably the best team in the league since mid-November. Denver is Denver. Oklahoma City's out here, with their young guns out here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, shout out to him, named an NBA All-Star as a starter. Like, the Pelicans have been playing well. like there's a lot of teams in front of the Mavericks where they're going to have to try and catch some of these teams. And I don't know if they'll have enough time to do it, namely because they can't stay healthy, but two, the continuity has just not been there. And they just haven't been consistent. They've been way too inconsistent to think that they could be a team that could finish themselves in the top 6, because right now they don't look like it.
Hey, KG, do you remember where we anticipated the Mavericks would finish? And of course, we're not at the finish, but do you remember where we were talking about them being at the start of the season?
Yeah, we talked about it as a play-in team. We talked about them as a play-in team.
And the tough part about it is, like, you saw some of the high ends of what they could do as a team. And when you see the high end, you're like, oh, that's a team that could vie for the top 4. But the problem is, are they that team all the time? And the answer is clearly no. And when you even this out with the inconsistencies that they have and whatever, sitting right about 8th in the West sounds about right. Sounds about right. And that's the thing that's a little frustrating. And I mean, that's the thing that needs to get fixed. And so I understand where the questions of, is Jason Kidd is the guy to do this, right? When he was hired, we had a lot of questions in that regard.
Did.
Right? But that's what's going to be needed, right? Is finding some level of consistency. It's not simply about the high end, right? Because again, there's 82 of these things. The high end is only one or few of the 82. It's how consistently can you do it and how much can you call upon it any given day. And right now, I think it's very evident that there's multiple teams in these Dallas Mavericks, and not all of them are the good ones.
There are different variations of the Mavericks, none of which we've seen for the most part have been good when they've had a chance to prove it on the floor. Last thing before we get out of here, because I do want to answer this question. Shout out to y'all who have participated in our show today, which I thought was a fascinating question that we could answer here before we leave. From TJKTV, with the background you gentlemen have in radio, how would you compare doing lives like this one versus radio? The differences, and what's the difference you enjoy over the other?
I ain't cuss if I need to.
When I saw that question, that was the first thing that I thought of was, you know what? We can't curse on here, actually, you know, if the situation calls for it.
As you might be able to tell, it might get down, and I'm pretty sure KG's get down. We try not to, right? Like
exactly.
You know what I mean? If you don't need to, no need to do that. But if I feel like it, and if I get to that place, I do not have to like fully go into the place where I don't. But yeah,
hit the dump button, hit it, hurry up and hit it.
Other than that, I think in the ways that we do this, it feels pretty similar. And it's one of the things that I can say about radio compared to like any other medium is it really does allow you to kind of flesh out and have some time to, you know, go with the flow, have conversations.
Yeah.
And especially nowadays compared to maybe like 10, 15 years ago, it feels like people really enjoy the fun of it all. Right. And like allowing yourself to kind of go with the flow in that regard. So it feels relatively similar to me, and maybe you have a different perspective as somebody who actually does the live portion of this a lot more. Maybe, and you know what it is? You know what one of the differences is? People aren't expecting you to do 4 hours of this.
Correct.
So you can condense it down, right? You don't have to do as much of the here's an update on what's happening. You don't have to do as much of the, you know, what are the conversations that we can have to fill time, right?
Yes.
You could just pare it down to these are the things I want to talk about, and usually 45 minutes to an hour, you can get out of here.
Yeah, and the lack of restriction, I think, is huge in a space like this, because we can have free-flowing conversations, but those are usually built 15 minutes at a time. And, you know, platforms like this, you can really be able to have some extended conversation and really have a little bit more, I guess I wouldn't say more fun, because I mean, you have fun doing it either way, but I think this opportunity and space allows that to naturally happen much more than trying to maybe manufacture that in a 15 minute segment or a half hour segment, whatever the case may be. So yeah, there's a lot more freedom and creativity, I think, when you have a chance to do lives like this. But also, you know, while there's interactions, you know, for radio programs, whether it be a text line or, you know, a call in or a talk back, there's immediate reaction when you have, you know, commentary from folks who are able to, you know, throw in their various questions or whatever in a chat. And it just makes for opportunities to have other conversations as well, while still trying to keep, you know, the main conversation being, you know, what it is. So, you know, I think those are some of the differences. I enjoy both spaces. I think both of them are very fun and allows it to be, you creative in that way. So sorry,
I feel
my
bad
wife walked
because
in the room and I got distracted.
hi. I feel bad because I always forget.
Y'all can't see her. Y'all don't get to see her. I get to enjoy that at home. You're welcome.
I'm not gonna make no comments.
You don't have to. I'm watching her walk out the door.
This is also we would do this on there.
The podcast will love that portion of the program right there.
That's right. But yeah, I always forget to go over to the comments and see all the comments that are happening. So shout out to all of y'all and all the I was waiting for the ones that you actually put up on the screen, but I forget.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other comments. And
yeah. My uncle, he clearly not here for Grant Williams. Talking about he's a waste of wasting money so far. He's definitely not here for that. He also feels like Luka cried too much, which I mean,
you can't knock that one.
I'm not gonna necessarily disagree on that particular front there, but no, we have a lot of fun here, and this is at least for me, has allowed me to continue to create a space where I'm not doing obviously everyday radio like how I used to, but it still at the same time has some of the same fun conversations that I enjoy having, but also being able to do it with people who also do this very well, and they're able to do it in a little bit more unique of a space when it comes to things like YouTube Live or whatever the case. People? You, or whomever is a guest on this particular program. And for folks who have asked me like, hey, do you miss, the terrestrial radio? Do you miss doing the day-to-day, of what you used to do? And I tell them, yeah, I do miss that. But at the same time, it has allowed me to try to find a different way to still enjoy what I do, but also expand the platform that I've been fortunate to be able to grow because of folks, like yourself and others who, listen or participate as well. That has allowed for some more creativity that I think I'm learning to enjoy, because I didn't think I would necessarily be stretched in that way without having to leave and go do something different based off of what I was doing previously in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it is what it is. But this is why we do this. This is why I have fun doing this. And I'm so glad that Reggie decides to join me when he does, to be able to have some of this fun as well.
Yeah, man, it's fun. It's fun.
By the way, shout out to Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp said, you know what? Time for me to go.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp said he ain't got the energy no more.
Oh, that's it, Klopp, didn't I?
And you know what? Praying on their downfall. Excited to see it. They are. I mean, there's already news that, as you could tell, I got excited. There's already news that various other assistant coaches under his will also leave at the end of the season.
Oh, everybody gone, huh?
I can't wait. I cannot wait. I want Liverpool to get back to that place.
Can't wait.
I want them to get seeing them at the top of the table all the damn time was getting annoying. And obviously, there's still some talented players on that roster, so it's very possible that they, another manager comes in and keeps the thing rocking. However,
and people have to understand we're coming from a place where we're both Manchester United fans. So praying on the downfalls of the Man Cities of the world, the Arsenals of the world, the Liverpools of the world is something that we continuously pray for every day.
Yeah.
While praying to the guys that they somehow figure it out for Manchester to get it, going in the right direction. Because even with Erik ten Hag, it has not been a great experience so far.
One thing I have definitely found out about myself, there's some hater for sure in there, right? Like I definitely gain more enjoyment out of Schadenfreude than I do out of success of teams that I care about. Although to be fair, right? In sports, there's not a lot of teams that I have tied my emotions to. Right?
United is one of them.
United is one of them. You've seen that, right?
Yes.
United is one of them. But people love asking me, because especially, and I do like that in this space in sports talk and covering sports, there is room to be fans, because look, man, it's understood. You were a fan before you got into this media space, so there's that emotion. And I think at one point, it was well, you need to be unbiased. And it's it's tough to, kill that portion of you that loves the sports of this. But I really am just a sports fan, right? There's a lot of hey, what's your favorite football team? Don't really have one, right? I kind of like the sport. What's your favorite basketball team? Don't really have one. I just but there's a few teams. There's a few teams that I do have emotional investment in. Damn it if Manchester United ain't one of them.
And before we get out of here, it's funny you said it, because I think in a lot of ways that's how sports media has changed a little bit as well. Is there used to be this real defined line. Look, you check your fandom at the door when you get out here, whether it be on the radio, on television. You check your fandom at the door. In a lot of ways now, it has really reversed where, personalities kind of embrace the idea that they're a fan of said team that they talk about or cover, while still trying to balance the line of how much do I let, my fandom seep into this while still trying to objectively cover and talk about these teams or teams that I may actually have, a fandom or an allegiance to. That's something that I've had to try to figure out over the years covering the Cowboys, because I had to learn real quick. I got to separate my fandom when it comes to objectively talking about this team. But also, you're going to hear in my voice, damn it, when I'm not happy with this team, it's going to come out, because objectively, this team might be trash at times based on the way that they're playing. And I just happen to be a fan of that team that may be trash at that particular point.
Yeah, you be going through it. That's crazy. I don't have to talk about the teams that make me go through it.
Yeah, so good for you. That's a good space
I can keep that to Twitter. In. Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Eventually, Manchester United is going to get on my nerves where I throw them in the bin. I guarantee it's going to happen at some point. We'll see.
We'll see. Tell the folks where they can find you, what you got going on, man.
At Reggie Adetula on Twitter. I don't know if there's anything edification wise. Like, it's just a lot.
Follow him.
A lot of retweets lately. Not a lot of like original ideas. So just a disclaimer. Don't get there and say I didn't tell you. But 105 Through the Fan, Mondays through Fridays at 7 p.m. is Get Right. I host it, and various other folks join me on it. And yeah, that's solid. And then every once in a while, maybe usually once a week, I'll hop on with Locked On Mavs, not Nick Angstadt, talk about the Mavericks. So those are the things that I have going. How about this? And I probably should save this for off air, but you know what? Screw it. I was on the last Locked On Mavs that I was on. Someone got in the comments and said, Nick, your friend Reggie's a Freemason. And I was like, never been called that before.
Wait, what?
No idea, dog. No idea whatsoever.
They just jumped off the top rope with that one.
And it's stuck in my mind, right? Because there's a lot of things that people like accuse or say things, and I'm just like, all right,
yeah.
Whatever. I'm like, it's water off a duck's back. That one is so like particular. And then I'm like, I'm interested in knowing what made you think that. Like, what about my life?
That's what you led with, was that right there.
And then also, right, the question then I have then is like, what is that person view of the Freemasons? Are they just talking about like that as the Freemasons as like just a, I don't know, group of folks, or are they on the like Illuminati tip? Because like that adds a whole nother level to this where I'm like, okay, so what do you think is happening over here? Because what I can tell you is that it's a lot less interesting over here than you imagine. Significantly less interesting. I don't do nothing. No, especially nothing
hilarious.
So yeah.
Well, shout out to that person who clearly identified you as something that they felt like they imagined in their mind.
Which
I guess so.
The imagination is a wonderful place, ain't
it? Depending on who we're talking to. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. And yes, I crossed over to the dark side and jumped on TikTok.
Baby. He on the clock app.
Oh man. Look, it's funny.
You gonna be doing them dances?
No. My niece was like, I talked to her about it. I said, hey, do you think as a sports person I should jump on TikTok? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, really? Why? Because TikTok is like, another place where people can find you. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go ahead and do that, I guess. Wait, now, what is Dylan saying here? What is Dylan saying here?
You were on with Grady Nick on Locked On Mavs, Gunners fan. That's okay. So they want to let you know that they want Jason Kidd out.
Okay, got it. All right, cool.
Shout out to the Arsenal fan. I actually I have like a little bit of affinity for Arsenal because
now
Thierry Henry.
Haley is going to see this portion of the program and then hold this over your head for as long as she will know you now, because you had the audacity to get out here and say you got some kind of affinity for Arsenal. Really, Reg?
Because Thierry Henry, clearly. TT is incredible. But yeah, I do love that instantly I knew what they were talking about with Grady Nick, because he do a little bit look like Grady Dick, don't he? Just a little bit. That's hilarious.
But yeah, you can find me on TikTok now at KG Sports 4, I think is what it is. I'm still learning and then figuring this out.
Why'd you add a 4?
Well, I didn't. They did. The username says KG Sports. The handle on here says as I try to find this for people right now.
You definitely sound like somebody's daddy right now.
I do. It sounds terrible.
Let me look at it.
Let me look at this.
Say right here, KG Sports 4.
It says at KG Sports 4. I guess there's a bunch of KG Sports out here.
Sounds like 3 other ones. Yeah.
I guess so. So let's put the 4 on his and put it that way. So yeah, you can find me on TikTok now, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thanks, Rez. That doesn't help.
But to be fair, I couldn't. I'm not on TikTok.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, if you are, go follow me there as well at KG Sports, the number 4, if you will.
And you've been trying to wrap up the show for like 15 minutes now.
I know. I'm on my third closing. I'm on my third closing now at this point. Yeah, do that. Follow me there. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin Great Sports. Download the Gray Area Podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Really appreciate Reggie Adetula for joining me here on Friends Friday. You can go back and watch this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Great Sports, or download the podcast, give it a 5-star rating, and write a review for it while you're there. Hopefully you enjoyed the show today, and hopefully Reggie will be back with me when the calendar turns to February, because we'll have a Super Bowl to get ready to talk about between whomever, whether it be the Chiefs and the line. I'm not going to go through all the combinations. I was about to try that. I'm not doing that. Yeah, somebody will be in from the AFC. Somebody will be in from the NFC. And we'll talk about it. And I'll talk about it on Monday when I come back here on the Gray Area Podcast. For Reg, I'm Kevin. I'll talk to you on Monday. Peace.